So today we are going to talk about using a virtual community strategy to help kind of reimagine how students are engaging with tutors and supplemental instruction resources as they work through their curriculum and learning. We are recording the webinar today, so we will send out a copy of that to everybody just after the webinar. Takes a little while to get all that processed, so look for that probably Friday or maybe Monday, depending on how quickly we can get it done. And then I also want to just encourage everyone to make this as interactive as possible. We have 3 great panelists, which we're going to introduce in a second, but this is really designed to be a conversation. We want to learn from the folks that are here today, but we also want to learn from you. So feel free to post in the chat if you have questions, if things come up that you want to talk about. And in fact, if you don't mind just taking a second to introduce yourself in the chat, let us know who you are, where you're from, if there's something in particular that brought you here today that you're really curious to learn about, because we will make sure that we touch on that throughout the conversation today. Let me see if I can. No, once again, I cannot see the chat. So let's talk about who we have with us today. So first of all, my name is Katie Kapler. I'm co-founder and CEO at Inscribe. We are the host of today's session. And so if you're not familiar, Inscribe is a virtual community platform. We are designed to wrap around content and curriculum to give students a very scalable, on-demand space where they can connect with peers, faculty, and staff, and get questions answered and find the connections that they need anytime, anywhere. But I am not really going to do, hopefully, a lot of talking today because I'm joined by 3 great panelists. Before we have them introduce themselves, I also want to introduce Danielle Bonner, my colleague who's joining us today. She is going to be the sort of keeping track of everything that's going on in the chat, helping us stay organized. So again, if you have questions, please post them there. Danielle will interrupt us throughout the discussion so that we can weave those questions into the conversation and make sure that we address them as we go. All right, with that said, I am going to ask each of our panelists today to introduce themselves, maybe just tell us who you are, where you're from, and then if you don't mind just saying a few words about your institution, because I think we have a great variety today. I'm pretty sure everyone on the call is familiar with all of your schools, but if you don't mind just taking a minute to talk a little bit about it and what makes your school unique, I think that would be great. So Sasha, why don't you lead us off?
Awesome. Well, hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're at. I am Sasha Flores. I am the current project manager of strategic initiatives for Rio Salado College. Rio is in the Phoenix area. We are one of 10 community colleges. We are part of the largest, or at least one of the largest community colleges in the country. Rio is primarily an online school for our degrees and certificates. We also have a large dual enrollment population. We also have a very large ABE population, so GED and ESL types of classes. We're a very diverse school. So meeting the needs of our students in online asynchronous courses was definitely a unique challenge. So we were excited to bring the Inscribe product forward, and we're using it in many ways. We're just excited to talk about the tutoring aspect of it for today. So welcome.
Awesome.
It's nice to see you all.
Thank you so much, Sasha. Great to have you here. Joelle.
Okay. Hi, all. Joelle Galbraith. I'm the Online Academic Support Director at BYU-Idaho, our flagship campus in Utah, Brigham Young University in Provo. We're Idaho, one of the sister institutions in Idaho. But our online program is how our system runs the online programs largely through our campus. So we serve about at BYU-Idaho, we serve about 32,000 students on campus. And then we have about a similar number, about 30,000 or 30 to 35,000 exclusively online students that we serve as well. And many of those are international. And I think today's, I'll mention a little bit about how Inscribe's been able to help us reach that population with tutoring in ways that we weren't reaching them before very successfully. We've got students in 185 countries, those 32,000 students, and it keeps us busy.
It's probably an understatement right there. Thank you, Joelle and Jonathan.
Hi there, Jonathan Myers, Director of Projects for University College at Arizona State University. If you don't know it, ASU, it's located at our main campus or Tempe campus, located in Tempe, Arizona, but we have 3 other metropolitan campuses on the West Campus, downtown, and in the East Valley. Beyond our metropolitan campuses, we also have local campuses that are growing across the country in California and DC and other spaces. And then, of course, our online campus, so ASU Online, as well as universal learning courses through one of our enterprises. So with that, we have on our immersion campuses over 100,000 students. And then, online, we've grown as well to almost equal 100,000 students. So we're looking to serve both, our online and immersion students in multiple ways. And so for our use case for the Inscribe platform within our college, we've looked to expand the usage as a service element for tutoring, mostly for within University College for the digital immersion students, but our growing partnerships with Ed Plus, I'm looking to strategize how we can leverage each other's resources and work collaboratively with faculty and our partners to deliver excellent tutoring and supplemental instruction for over 200,000 students.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. I'm so excited to have you all here and to talk about both sort of the differences and the commonalities that you all have found as you embark on this process. I mean, in a way, very different institutions represented here, but I think some similarities in the sense that sort of the traditional tutoring model, make an appointment, show up, one-on-one, wasn't really working for your student population. So I'd love to dig in a little bit on, what you were seeing with that model, what was working, what wasn't working, and maybe a little bit about what inspired you to try something new. So I'm going to throw the ball first to you, Jonathan, and then we can kind of work through.
Yeah, absolutely. So really kind of how University College looked and really was introduced to the Inscribe platform as an option was our online partners. They initially piloted and really grew the utilizing the Inscribe communities within math and writing communities, specifically for our online students. And that was really, in design to provide a community for online learners that are all across the world at various points in time. And for us on the immersion side, through the direction of our president and our dean of our college was really about how do we scale our services. We have 100,000 immersion students. As we all know, especially this work really kicked off during COVID, where everybody pretty much went to digital learning. So it was really in our playbook, but the tool that was already being piloted within Ed Plus really accelerated and provided us an option to test delivering new tutoring models within our tutoring services online. So about a year ago is when we transitioned and ran a pilot in the spring for our math communities, and since then has grown quite a bit. So
And I don't know if you mentioned, so immersion equals on ground, is that?
Yeah, sorry, ASU speak. Immersion is our traditional on-ground campus students. We also say digital immersion, which would be essentially a hybrid of either traditional 100% online students or students who are taking both online and immersion students. So they kind of are categorized into both, but we are really seeking to expand our services to all immersion and all digital immersion students.
So really interesting, like thinking about, first of all, scale, right? How do we continue to deliver these services effectively if we're hitting 200, 300, 400,000 students, and how digital can play a role in that? And then also what I heard was that this problem wasn't necessarily unique to your online students, that you were also maybe struggling to scale that even for the students on ground and trying to find a solution that could accommodate maybe both of those populations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think all traditional tutoring models or tutoring centers have dealt with the challenges of, staffing, during our, normal business hours. Most traditional learners or students, they're very busy lives and they're doing homework late at night. So for us, it was not only an issue of scaling our services, but also to do our best to deliver 24/7 academic support. It's really kind of the new model that we've been designing our services around, knowing that we can't have tutors around the clock, but at least providing a space for students to engage our tutors at any point in time, and for us to either reconnect or for them to connect with their peers in a space outside of the traditional classroom.
Gotcha. Yes. And that 24-hour model, Joelle, I know that is very near and dear to your heart. And you touched on that a little bit in your introduction about the global nature of the students that you serve. So I don't know, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges you were seeing with that, with your student population, and kind of how you thought through this approach?
Yeah, that is key. We have as I mentioned, a large international student population. That's also our fastest growing sector of students, and that have both. So before we worked with Inscribe, we were offering the traditional tutoring, face-to-face schedule. We have a in-house app that we're system where students can search for tutoring appointments, and it connects them with live tutors and stuff. We knew that wasn't serving our international students well, so as we got Inscribe on, we saw the interactions happening all times of the day and night. It really followed the sun, and the need was probably there for years. We just weren't serving it. And once we threw in the asynchronous and peer tutoring using Inscribe, we saw that need that was probably there all along really finally being met in a much better way. Another characteristic of our international students is limited access to internet. So even if they could get on Zoom, that was very expensive for many of our students to get the data required to do long Zoom sessions. WhatsApp is a preferred and often cheaper source, but for synchronous communication, subsidized often by many telecom companies internationally. But anyhow, but our university had chosen Zoom, so that was expensive for our international students. This asynchronous tutoring and peer support that we've got through Inscribe has been a benefit, I think. Awesome.
Yeah, and I think that's something that consideration around access to internet, access to technology, bandwidth, which is pervasive internationally, also was something that came up a lot during COVID. I feel like as students were trying, who traditionally would have been on campus, were moving online, that exists even, here in the US in a lot of communities. So I imagine that could come up even for local student populations. So Sasha, I know that Rio is a little earlier in the design process for your tutoring spaces, but talk a little bit about what has inspired you to go down this path. Do you feel like, these conversations around timing and access and scalability, do those resonate? Was there something else that was kind of pushing you in this direction?
Yeah, absolutely. So just for, explanation, Katie mentioned we are early in our journey. We just launched our embedded tutoring community in mid-October. I think October 17th was when we launched. So we're still kind of babies in this space. But what we were recognizing, what we were looking for were just more ways to put tutoring in front of our online asynchronous students. As Joelle mentioned, when you have that asynchronous model, students could be in their in their class and needing help any time of the day. It could be 2 a.m. Arizona, it could be 2 p.m. Arizona time. And, you know, it's not easy to staff, like Jonathan mentioned, it's not easy to staff 24/7, right? So how do you put something in front of students, but also how do you show them where to access tutoring services? Sometimes students aren't always the most proactive to look for things on their own. And our math department was already looking for some way to embed tutoring into our online courses anyway. And we had already launched the Inscribe product for a different purpose. And it just seemed like this perfect, almost Venn diagram of, we have this great tool, it can be embedded in our LMS, and we have our own proprietary LMS at Rio. So we knew we could already embed it into classes. So it just kind of fit that we could touch our online students, our asynchronous students with a product that they're already using for another purpose. It just all seemed to align together, and to make that more visible for them, and kind of that easy touch point. Instead of having to log in here and touch this and click on that and do 5 steps, it's literally right there in their class. Click here to get support. So we're excited for where we're going to take this. We are still a little early, but it's been great to have this opportunity.
That's awesome. And we hear that so often from the institutions we work with. Like, we have all these services that we offer, and the students maybe don't take advantage of them because they're, you know, as Joelle says, they're not convenient, or to your point, Sasha, they don't even know they're there, or they're not seeking them out. And so it's this combination of like making it accessible, you know, to Jonathan's point, making it scalable for the institution, but also the awareness piece and being where the students are when they need it, which I think all 3 of you guys have done such a good job of as you've rolled these community spaces out. So I'd love to kind of talk about the nuts and bolts of that a little bit more, and really dig into each of the designs that you have approached as you've thought about this. And what, for people that aren't familiar with Inscribe, you've heard all of our panelists today talk about asynchronous a lot. And so one of the main focuses and features of Inscribe is that it creates an asynchronous space for conversation. So although people can be online simultaneously and talking, it's not requiring 2 people to be, you know, actively in a room together in order to ask questions and seek help. So it's trying to have that sort of increased level of flexibility, which I think you'll see as we look a little bit into the sort of specific designs that everyone has. And I think first up, Joelle, do you mind sharing a little bit about how you've integrated it into the classrooms, and even talk about, because you have kind of a unique design for how you think about your community spaces relative to your courses and course sections, and then also like who's in there as the tutors, sort of helping your students along the way.
Okay. That'll be fun sometime to learn how we're unique. I didn't know that we were.
In many ways.
Are we doing it wrong? Should we be doing it a different way?
No, you're leading the
okay.
way. You're leading the way.
Well, okay. So I think a key thing too is the embedding. Like Sasha was saying, this has got to be easy. And right now, Inscribe is easy. Our face-to-face tutoring is still a pain for students, unfortunately. We've not cracked that nut yet, but are working on some things. But at least we get them somewhere really quick. And as you can see here on the left, that tutoring resources link is in every course. Well, in every course we have tutoring for. And, you know, it doesn't get much easier. It's right there in the class. You click tutoring resources, you've got tutoring. Before it used to be under help and other places, we got a kind of dedicated button, and it brings it up right in your course. You don't, in this case, Business 115, you don't have to leave the course. You can do stuff right there. You know, ask your question right there while you're in your Canvas course. We use Canvas as our LMS. We've got about 98 of these spaces. That serve, I think, 114 of our online courses. And our online courses are largely built the same, you know, one curriculum for all sections. All of our online sections are use the same standardized curriculum. So it's really ideal. Then these one spaces can be set up very similar. So I think in your next slide, you've got kind of how we set that up. We use topics within the course. Each
Oh my gosh.
topic is assigned to a week. So since all the sections, when we started, all the sections, had the same content in weeks 1 through 14, we thought that was a nice organizational or a nice way to set up the topics. In the meantime, however, we've got different variants and flavors of courses coming in and online, and different sister institutions using, just a little bit different flavor, where the weeks they don't teach the same thing in the same week. So they're kind of moving things around a little bit. So that made it confusing for students. We could no longer use the weeks. And so we're moving to something we were probably introduced to at the very beginning, but are now using is channels. So we're setting up, so we're doing like accounting as the community. We're clustering a number of accounting courses together. And then for each course, we drop in a channel. And so students, we're hoping that achieves some things for us, where students get to know tutors more. The tutor might tutor for more than one course, build some more rapport with students. Anyhow, those are some of the things. Is that kind of what you're looking for?
Yeah, and I thought, one of the things, and it kind of got back to what you were saying around, well, sometimes we have, 7-week courses, sometimes they're a little longer, but really what the foundation of that is that you're taking all your course sections that are learning a particular topic, and they're sharing a single Inscribe community. So although they are accessing it from their individual course section in Canvas, this space is actually shared across multiple sections. Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about why you wanted to embrace that design versus an individual community for each section?
I think it's just better. It's limited resource. You got the same tutors that can help students across the sections. Again, that worked well for us because our sections were all the same. They all used the same textbook. They all had the same assignments in the same week. So it just, why fracture up your communities per section with a tutor in there? Let's dump them all in the same space. And a big thing about that, of course, is that there's lots of more peer support that way. You've much better chance of finding a peer online at 2 a.m. Even if your tutor isn't yet, and you could get a response at 2 a.m. from a peer or by morning, or a couple of responses, and before a tutor's even seen that question. So by having more bodies in there, it lends itself to a greater peer community, I think.
Greater scalability and greater access for sure.
Katie, I'm going to jump in real quick here.
Yeah, please.
We had a couple of questions come into the chat. The first one was in regards to embedding and integration. Sasha, thank you for jumping into the chat and responding to that one. But we've talked about the LMS integration. Anything you'd like to add about integration, Katie?
Yeah, so great question. So I think everybody up here is going to speak to the importance of integration as we go through each of their design approaches. Our philosophy is you need to be where the students are when they need help or when they're thinking about this. And so if it's 3 clicks to get there, it may as well be 100 clicks. So we've really designed Inscribe to be a platform for integration, which includes the learning management system, but it also could include things like the student portal, websites. We actually do a lot of integrations directly with courseware, which I don't know, Jonathan, if you'll touch on that at all, but so if you're using a courseware product, let's say from McGraw-Hill or Wiley, we can actually integrate Inscribe directly into that courseware experience. So if the student's in there practicing, they don't even have to go back to the LMS to get to their community. They can get it right from that practice space. So that's very important to us. And we've done a lot of work to think about how to streamline that for students and the tutors that are supporting them.
Wonderful. And then the next question we have, we're actually going to get to in a couple of slides, but I'll go ahead and ask it now so that maybe Joelle can answer it. But given the open approach for students to participate and ask questions in the community, have you had to deal with any academic integrity issues? And if so, if a student posts a question or answers that another student might be tempted to copy their solutions?
That is one of our questions, but we'll dig into it here and then we'll just pass over it when we get to it later in the session.
Yeah, so there's that type of thing happens. Yep. But so the way we've set things up is we put a moderator over every space. And it's not just important to have a moderator there, kind of monitoring things, but and this is a moderator is inscribe speak for tutor, at least for us. And we give them specific tasks every day. You're checking, so they've got this checklist of things to do every day when they get to work, looking for unanswered questions, looking for overshares. Frequently they're just overshares. The other thing, we've set it to not allow for any anonymous posts. So I think that's really cut down it's cut down on the nefarious style of oversharing. And what we're left with is just, we even have tutors sometimes that overshare. And the instructor might say, whoa, or an instructor from another section or class might say, that's practically giving away the answer. We've also designed, and I think this is important, like policy-wise, we've set up one faculty member as our arbiter of those types of things. So, 3 faculty may say, no, that's not oversharing. That's fine. I'm glad they're being that helpful or whatever. And another faculty saying, no, that's cheating. We can't deal with that. So we've asked the department, we want one person that we go to and say, after we've already reviewed it or something, if it still is questionable, we get one faculty response, and then we say, talk to the department chair if you got a problem with that or something. So that's been helpful.
Interesting that you have that process. And I love the word that you used, overshare, because I think that's what we hear, the frequency from what we hear. And Jonathan, I'm going to turn it to you in a second. So if you could include this in your answer as well, but very rarely is it nefarious, but sometimes people sort of accidentally, not realizing that they're doing it, maybe share a little more than they should. And to Joel's point, where that line is not black and white, right? So one of the interesting things about having something like that happen in a community is it is an opportunity, whether it's the tutor or a fellow student, to actually step in and say, this is an example of maybe giving too much information to a fellow student. And so you're almost like teaching people along the way about what the norms are and how to approach them. So it can almost become a benefit in the community as well. Jonathan, I would love to hear, so, ASU's deal as managing a slightly different student population, a really large student population. Talk to us a little bit about how you guys approach this. And then if you don't mind also just speaking to that question around academic integrity, which I know everybody, we were going to bring it up anyway, because it's something everybody always asks about with some of the other platforms that are out there. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to go into kind of our design and then come back to academic integrity?
Yeah, let's do design first, and then we'll come back to that topic.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. So for our tutoring setup, our 24/7 support model. So it was actually about a little more than a year ago. So that we really were intentional in our design. And so I do want to give, thanks to Anna and the team, because, we really leaned on them for some of our design feedback. And they were really great about, this is some examples that other institutions are using. We also had the great opportunity of working closely with our Ed Plus partners on how they've structured it, or their communities. They have more ties with their faculty buy-in just because of the way they're structured and some embeddedness, but their scope of courses is also for the most part limited to high DW math courses, at least for their initial rollouts. But essentially for the spring, we're piloting really just a math community. We've since then expanded it to 5 communities, which are based on topics. So last spring, we really, for the most part, had about half of those math courses. And so the design there was really, and on the next slide I'll show, is like essentially trying to figure out how we best deliver access. So, our webpage was one intentional design piece, and it has evolved. Initially, it was essentially, as Katie said, clicks, and sometimes that, pushes or, students away. So we had extra clicks, even from the LMS. So we always had the intention of delivering through our community through Canvas as well. So our initial spring was actually called academic support. You can actually kind of see it in the upper left-hand corner. That's our old instance. But since then, we've redesigned it where students, again, it has the embedded view. So spring was more of a pop-out. And this fall, we've moved it to the embedded view within Canvas. And then to the other platform integration. So Alex with McGraw-Hill, so that's for our Math 117 course, that has been a resource. And so we've been able to essentially embed, again, our Inscribe platform or our Inscribe communities channels for that integration. So students, as they're in their workspace, can see the questions and suggestions. And then, of course, yeah, as I mentioned, our tutoring web page. So we, as a link to kind of, I think, Joel, you mentioned, like, it's a struggle for students to understand or navigate, like, how to get appointments, how to connect with students in a digital space now that we're offering that. So we've tried to, layer that out. We also have some chatbots that we're also incorporating. So if you go back to one slide, that one, yeah, you'll see it's just for us, it's a multi-tiered strategy of building kind of the peer-to-peer connection and then some technology solutions through chatbots. But for us, that's a key partnership or key structure in how we are developing content. So for us, the primary usage that we've seen so far are students viewing resources and viewing conversations from either the resources that we upload, whether it's a supplemental instruction video or example lessons or review sessions. And so for us, the tagging aspect in the channels also influence our chatbot developments. And so we have to be really intentional in developing kind of that approach of developing resources for students to easily search resources, trying to keep a similar experience across those platforms. But yeah,
well, before you jump into the next thing, I was just gonna again, for people who aren't as familiar with the platform, because I think you touched on some really interesting things there, which are, as someone comes into the community, a lot of what we've seen represented are the conversations in the community. So students asking for help and getting help. Probably an important element that we haven't stated explicitly, but I'm guessing people would gather, is those conversations are then viewable by other members of the community. So the idea is if one student gets help on a topic, that help session, so to speak, is now part of a repository that other students can answer or can access. So students are learning from the questions that their fellow students asked. What we don't really see represented, but I know is a big part of the ASU and BYU-I strategy, and likely will be with Rio, is you can also upload resources proactively to your community. So little instructional videos, articles, things like that. So what we often see is tutors either already know the kinds of questions that students and challenges students run into, or they learn them as they're interacting with students. So they might create like a quick little video, share that to the community, and now that becomes part of the repository that all of the students can access and benefit from. So just if you haven't used Inscribe, that duality of opportunity might not be as clear. But I also love what you guys have done here in terms of multiple access points. You're sort of covering all your anywhere a student might be coming. When they're looking for help, we're going to give them a way to get to their community from here. And so it's like that very more the merrier concept in terms of providing those access points, which I think is a really great strategy.
Hey, Katie, we have a couple of questions.
Yeah,
here.
sorry, please.
No worries. So a bit ago, Joelle had mentioned anonymous posting. Can you share some details on what anonymous posting might be used for?
Yes, so when a student posts in their Inscribe community, they can either post it publicly, so everybody can see them and see their post. They can post it privately, which means only the moderators or the tutors in the community would see that post. Their fellow students would not see it. Or they can post anonymously. So it's visible to everybody, but their identity is hidden from other students. The anonymity does not extend to the moderators. So a tutor or moderator could actually go in and see who posted it. But providing that sort of frontline anonymity, what we found is it can sometimes encourage a population of students who are a bit nervous or anxious about jumping in and participating, kind of encourage them to start participating. Because I think we all know a lot of times students think, wow, I'm like the only person that doesn't understand this concept, or I'm the only one that seems to not be getting it. And it can, depending on your personality, can be hard to be the one that raises your hand and says, I don't get it if you're feeling that way. So that's how that functions. But as Joelle said, it's not required. So you can turn that feature on and off in your community, depending on, you know, what works for your student population.
And the next question, we have someone that's asking for documentation about how Inscribe is different or similar to some of our competitors. But I'd love it if you could address that live here as well.
So it's interesting. I think the main alternative I think that people have been using in the tutoring space is really the live tutoring, synchronous live tutoring sessions. So, you know, in that case, to the point, and I think our panel has been talking about it, layering an asynchronous option on top of that is not meant to replace live tutoring. It's really meant to be more of a additional option, a more flexible option, a more scalable option that can then supplement those individuals that really do need to jump into a live tutoring session. In terms of the broader sort of like community tool space, you know, Inscribe is a little unique. It's designed to work across the student life cycle. So we have communities that are focused on academics, but we also have communities that focus on many different areas. The ability to bring multiple sections together, the ability to integrate from lots of different locations. So there's a long list. I think we should probably follow up with a separate conversation with that, because that can kind of veer us off track of the tutoring.
Yeah. So
I do think, and I'm interested in talking to Jonathan more about this, but I think we're starting to fiddle with a bot, and it's, you know, such a rich source of questions and answers for a bot to mine. And if you've only got the synchronous, you're missing out on knowing what your students are asking about. I mean, you can capture that. You can capture topically through synchronous interactions, you know, assuming they're logged by the mentor or by the tutor. But yeah, we're looking forward to just kind of sicking the bot on the Inscribe community and say, go learn what people are asking and which questions or which answers are endorsed or provided by the tutors, and start building your own knowledge base.
Yeah.
You know,
what a great point. That's also, I think that's another place where people sometimes view these as competitive, but to your point, they're actually complementary. Like one can learn from the other, one provides a more extensible space. So that's a great point, Joelle. So Danielle, did we have more questions?
Yes, one more question from the audience. So does this tutoring work equally as well across courses and different disciplines?
Jonathan and Joelle, what's been your experience there?
Does like this model, I assume is so I think one key facet is, you know, it'll always work better the more faculty and departmental partnerships you have in terms of like just, you know, all the pieces of encouraging students to actually engage in this space, that it's a safe space, that it's an endorsed space. So that is a key factor for us. I mean, we work on that, but us within our tutoring office, our directive is to provide tutoring to all students for as many courses as possible. And so for this, it does provide us the opportunity semester over semester to, keep a knowledge base. And if one semester, maybe you're not able to hire an anatomy tutor because you just can't hire one. Well, now you at least have a space where students, again, can hopefully connect with each other. Hopefully you can work with that department to have one faculty lead or contact, maybe answer questions. And then of course, hopefully you've been able to build a knowledge base for students to, again, ask and find questions and resources. So equally across, I would say that it is definitely it provides an equal space, but engagement is in some ways dependent on partnerships, and depending on your institution, that can look very different. ASU's, as I said, a very large decentralized institution, so it's a challenge for us, but that it's just something that we work through, and we just leverage the power of our great students to support each other.
So not as dependent on subject area as opposed to something else.
Yeah, I would say we haven't seen, we definitely see differences in some communities. I don't know that we've really identified, is it topical or, is it subject area that's doing that. One area though, where we are seeing is in computer science, they have other tools. They're either using Slack or GitHub or, other kind of industry standard tools to communicate. And so there's a little bit of competition we see sometimes between these platforms. I think, but to what Jonathan's saying, our job is going to be to provide it for everyone. So we'll probably still have the community in some of those courses where the department really wants students interacting kind of as part of the course in this other professional, sphere. But we still have the space, and we just kind of say, hey guys, your communication's over there. And we link to their Teams or their Slack channel or their, wherever the department wants us to point them. So again, there's so it's not necessarily it's not that subject wouldn't benefit, but they've got other places that's happening, and we just work with them.
Well, in this talk, so Sasha, I want to dig in a little bit on your vision of where you're going with the community, because I believe you are starting with math, is that right? Or are you going to launch your tutoring community more broadly? Or
so right now we started with math, and this is just a quick peek into what our LMS looks like. So a student would log in, here's all of their list of classes. Each week they have their lessons, etc. We wanted this bold and upfront, in your face, put that front door right there, easy access, right, for them to get into the community. Right now we've launched it for 3 of our more entry level math courses. We have Math 103, Math 112, and Math 114. And these are those I want to say almost like gateway courses, right? They give you that good foundation for upper level math, especially math that you need if you're an engineering major, you really need a lot of good math later on, right? This is all foreign language to me because math is not my subject, but I'm here to support them. But in thinking about my own experience, being able to put this out there for students to easily get into, connect with one another, I think also demystifies asking for help, because a lot of students may not know where to look for help, but they may not be inclined to ask for help, right? They may be shy or lack the confidence to reach out and to see other students that are struggling. I think we talked about this earlier. Anna put it in chat, and Katie, you touched on it too. Being able to give them that peer-to-peer connection in a different community we actually have a lot of students that are looking for study groups and how can I find more help in this subject, that subject. So I believe that math will be kind of our launching point to extend it to other subjects later. But we're just doing our pilot right now. So we're looking for proof of concept in a way, but I'm really excited about the potential because I really think it's there to help students across many subjects.
Absolutely. Well, and I think you touched on an important point. So we often find ourselves talking about math when we talk about Inscribe learning in academic communities. And I think to your point, it's not because they only work in math, but it's because first year math is such a tricky subject for students to get by. And I don't think it's inappropriate to call it sort of a gateway course, because if you can't get through that course, maybe that's kind of the thing that causes you to leave school altogether, or it could simply be the thing that limits you from embracing that STEM degree that you want to go after, right? And that limitation can have big repercussions for a student. So the idea of focusing in math, from what I hear from our partners, is more that like, that's our biggest pain point. So like, let's start there, let's make progress there, and then we can easily extend it to these other subject areas. Well, I'm glad that you mentioned the other community that you're doing, because I would like to talk a little bit about, and everyone's kind of alluded to this, but how has the role, and I'm just keeping an eye on time because I know we're going to run out here in a minute. If you want to just talk quickly about in your existing community, Sasha, how peer support is playing a role and the benefit that you see there of students talking to other students and not necessarily just tutors or faculty in some of these spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. So as part of our work with Inscribe, we were actually partnered with the College Innovation Network, and there was a study done on our initial community last year to measure student belonging. And we had students say that they felt an increased sense of belonging, whether they were early adopters of the platform or if they were kind of late adopters sort of in the middle of the semester. They all said that they had an increased sense of belonging to the college, to one another. That was just really powerful for us. It's actually one of our college goals to increase student sense of belonging, that DEIB space. So we were just excited for that aspect of being able to continue with the Inscribe platform and building that peer-to-peer community. We're in early phases because we've only been in the platform for about 1.5 years. So we're in early phases of measuring other success, but we're absolutely looking for, any metrics of, does it help increase student completion in courses? Does it help increase goal attainment? We're starting that metric work now, but that's going to be a year-over-year kind of work. But overall, we're definitely seeing more peer-to-peer connectedness support. Just today, I had a student say, hey, I'm a 40-year-old student just going back to school. It's been a while. I'm a little nervous, but we've all got this. Just out of the blue, totally unprompted, just wanted to share and be everybody else's cheerleader. Oh, I love those stories. And I know it's hard to measure that, but seeing students connect and support one another is just so powerful. So that's what we're seeing so far. It's been great.
And don't underestimate the amount of times you'll see something like that in your math community. Like we see it all the time where I'm not a math person, I never got math, and the sort of social support that students get from peers alongside here's how you do quadratic equations or whatever is very, very common. And I know sense of belonging is something a lot of people are thinking about now, particularly after COVID, and it's really kind of present in the narrative. So I think, Danielle, did you post the research study in the chat?
I did post the research study.
So if you're interested in the study that Sasha just mentioned, you can download that and take a look at it. Some great work, and shout out to College Innovation Network as well. But we'll talk more about them another day. But you can learn more about them in that document as well. Joelle, do you want to speak just a little bit? We're going to in the interest of time, we're going to combine some of our questions here. So how have you seen peer-to-peer support kind of present itself in the communities that you're working in? And then do you mind talking a little bit about like outcomes and success criteria? How are you measuring the success of this initiative as you continue to roll it out?
Yeah. So I posted there in the chat a little bit obscurely that so something we're pleased to see, and that's one of our success outcomes, is we want a high student, we want more students, peers responding to each other than tutors or instructors. And that's kind of looking at some of our communities. We've got 81% peer interaction. So that's students asking questions, students answering each other long before the tutor gets there. And 16.4% tutor posts and instructor posts clear down at 2.2% of the community interaction. So that to us is that's, I don't know what our thresholds are, but that's a healthy and I know it's dropped since we last collected that data. The tutor posts are higher, but we want the bulk of it to be peers helping peers, students helping students, and that is what it still is. So that's one of our measures. I think that's the main. Well, I don't know if it's the main thing we're looking at as far as success outcomes, but a key one for us was also increased global activity, or that we're making sure we're meeting our international students' needs better with our tutoring. At a lower cost. Our international students pay a graded tuition, or however you call that. Can't think of the term offhand, but it's they pay a lot less than our domestic students, and that population is growing the fastest. So that impinges on our profitability or our revenue generation with tuition and stuff. So we need to keep this affordable, meaning our tutoring efforts affordable, and key to that is going to be peer-to-peer support.
Well, I love your
yeah.
peers. I love your peer-to-peer statistic, because one of the questions we always get is I guess one of the things people say is, I don't think students will help you. I don't think students will participate unless I require them to. But it actually turns out not to be true. Students love to get in there and help each other and be supportive of one another. And it's just intrinsic motivation to go in there and be part of this space and this community. So I love that statistic really reinforces that expectation and experience. Jonathan, do you want to talk a little bit? Yours are a little more unique. And so peer-to-peer interaction tends to change a little bit, I think, depending on the type of community you have. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, and then also some of the outcomes you guys are seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. As I've kind of mentioned in our structure, we do see more kind of that we do see students post questions, and there is that space for students to engage with each other. There are students, and it does also provide an opportunity for tutors to give words of encouragement, especially when students say, there's always those little seeds of self-doubt or whatnot. So it does provide a great space, not only for just that academic support, but a space for some coaching or connecting to other resources, just in terms of that peer-to-peer aspect. Overall, and outside looking at assessment of the effectiveness of our community. So very exciting. We actually yesterday afternoon was able to get a bit of a debrief on some research questions based off of I call it a spring pilot, even though it's not a pilot because it's just ever evolving. But just off of the students that were in our math community in the spring, a couple of key questions we were asking, will this provide greater access to 24/7 support? And the outcomes are absolutely. We had students engage in our communities every hour of every day during the semester in some way, shape, or form, either posting or viewing resources in some way, shape, or form. In terms of, we also were looking at, does this platform provide more equity and access to our students? And so obviously last year I think we're finally out of the COVID norms. I don't know how we phrase it, but there was still some of that latency of wanting to engage on campus. So I take that comes in some consideration, but ultimately what we found was that students who sought out tutoring, out of that 7,000 students or so of immersion students, 33%, which is a much higher percent, were more inclined to engage in the Inscribe community or the Inscribe community and via Zoom or tutoring versus just the traditional immersion side, which was a much smaller percentage. That absolutely. And then in terms of looking at the demographics that we did, in terms of providing access to, as we broke it down, first generation students of color were much more higher inclined percentage to access through tutoring through our Inscribe platform compared to their peers. So those were, some early kind of research questions, which really validates this work for us. And then over operational, within the platform, it has its own dashboard. We've taken that and worked with the team to kind of expand and for some of our own purposes, our internal dashboard, but we're seeing a 25% week over week unique user return rate. So, for us, that's a huge win. I mean, how unique students, how often do they come week over week to the tutoring center? I feel pretty confident the numbers aren't quite that high, but it just provides a great space. So those are some of the assessments we've been looking at and early wins from our perspective.
Wonderful, great, right, hot off the presses. That's I love that perspective, and thank you for sharing that information. So we have just 2 minutes left. So Danielle, is there one question we should take?
There's just one question left in the chat, and
all right.
Question is from Christina, and it says, does this work with subscription tutoring services as well?
So like third-party tutoring services?
That would be my guess, yes.
So all of our panelists here are doing their tutoring in-house. We can work with subscription services. That model is not represented among our partners here today, but if that's something you want to talk about, just reach out to me and we can have a chat about how that would work. Awesome. Well, as usual, I always misjudge the time, and so much great content. We probably could have done another half an hour, but I really want to thank everyone for being here. Sasha, Joelle, and Jonathan, you guys are doing amazing things for your students. Each one of you has such a great vision, and we are really lucky to be able to partner with you. So thank you for sharing your stories today. Thank you to everybody who joined us. Again, we will have the recording available and send it out to you. Normally, this is where I would promote our next webinar, but we're going to take a little break for the holidays. So look out for some outreach from us coming into January. Have a wonderful holiday season, and we look forward to seeing you all again in the new year.